Sarah Jackson sends her regrets. She wasn't able to make it this evening. But we'll hear a little bit in the call to action section from Casa de Paz later. I'd like to invite up now from El Centro Amistad, Jorge de Santiago, Executive Director, and from Intercambio, Maya Cordero, who is Marketing and Communications Director. Welcome. So this is the session on settlement and immigrant integration. And we're going to start out talking about asylum, which is a legal term. And in the U.S., an asylum seeker is a person who flees their home country, enters the U.S. by surrendering at the border, and applies for the right to protection. Asylum seekers are a type of immigrant who may also be a refugee or a displaced person, but they are not an economic migrant. So Jorge, wonder if you can talk about how the U.S. political environment is directly impacting the local Latinx immigrant community.
Thank you, Jeff. And before I say, I want to thank Ana Armando for sharing. Gracias por compartir su... Well, I think my perspective in how this is really affecting our Latinx community, especially the undocumented community in Boulder County and across the country, is really impacting their mental well-being. It's about really provoking a sense of trauma. Once they, even by asking, just by letting them wait right now on the border to seek asylum, or if they are lucky enough to cross, everything they have to go through, just, let's say immigrants, they're coming from Central America. I see the news in Mexico, seeing immigrants from Africa, South America now, and crossing just Mexico and try to get to the border in the United States. I can't imagine the trauma they're going through. You know, a family member losing a loved one in the journey, a son, a daughter. And when they reach, let's say, our community, they encounter the survival mode that they have to, to provide for their families, to provide for themselves. But that trauma that they carry with them is hurting them. So I'm not sure how many of you have suffered from trauma or any kind of depression or anxiety, fear. Just put yourself for a minute in their shoes. Just by feeling fear all the time that you can step out of your house and somebody's going to come and arrest you and send you home. And your kids are at school. Or the worst part of this, what we have seen, is that our people, our community is getting sick. And I think that's one of the worst things that we can say in terms of equity in our community. I think we have the right, when we say healthcare is a human right, well, having that, we're not asking for papers at this moment, we're just asking for access to care. In this case, we have seen an increase since the new administration took over of several community members suffering of trauma, fear. They're living in the shadow, of course, but they have to step out. And living like that, I can't imagine. I mean, I have feel fear and depression at one point in my life, but I have addressed it. And our community members, they don't. They have to continue surviving and working, and that really impacting not only themselves, but impacting their children as well. And it's sad to hear in the school system that the children are afraid to show up to school because they don't want to come back home and don't see their parents because they might be detained and deported. So it really, I think it's a crisis that we live in our country, in our society, in our community, where we need to really address that. And it's beyond, to me, the legal aspect of the immigration issue. It's about the emotional and health well-being of a human being, pretty much. So really looking at that sometimes is really tough to look and listen to those politicians talking and talking and talking. And I think we have to do more in our communities to address those issues in terms of disparities in our community about healthcare, about mental health, and so be supported to all communities, especially families with children, because they are suffering. They live in depression, fear, and trauma all the time. So what can we do?
Thank you, Jorge. My language can be a primary barrier for immigrants coming to the U.S. What are the language barriers or gaps here and nationally, and how is Intercambio working to close that gap?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. First up, I think it's important to remember that the ability to communicate, it's a basic human need, right? And when that doesn't happen, what we are seeing is parents unable to communicate with teachers, unable to participate in their kids' education. We're seeing people unable to access medical treatment because they can't talk to their doctors. We're seeing people, professionals, architects, engineers, working in a different field because they can't communicate their knowledge. And above all, we're seeing isolation because of fear, because they don't know what's going to happen if they step out of their house, right? So at Intercambio, through our English classes, what we're doing is to try to close that gap by creating a community where volunteers support the immigrant community. And what we're seeing is an increase in your confidence to communicate. What we're seeing is people really taking a step forward and daring to apply for better jobs, daring to talk with teachers, to go to the pharmacy, to ask for an aspirin in English. We're seeing that. Also, we're seeing family financial sustainability because they're willing to do more for their family. That's why they want, that's why they're here, that's why we're here, right? And so that's why with Intercambio we have partnered with over 1,600 community-based organizations that also share this vision, that also share this mission to really close the gap and let immigrants know it's okay. There's a whole community here willing to take you, from the hand and walk with you. It's not easy, but it's totally doable. And that's what we're doing. And right now we are partnering with over 600 communities, organizations, and it's our goal, our vision to double that number in the next couple years. And that's why we need more communities like this, so we can do that part we can continue helping the immigrant community.
Thank you. So Jorge, immigrants often have health issues exacerbated by language. El Centro Amistad addresses this problem with their Promotoras de Salud, Community Health Workers Program. Can you tell us about the Promotoras model and the impact in the community, and also beyond the Promotoras de Salud program, what other programs are promoting well-being and equity and access to health and leadership in the immigrant community?
Yes, well, first of all, I want to recognize our Promotores de Salud. They are pretty much the experts of the disparities in our community. They have the experience, they have the wisdom, they have gone through the same issues that a lot of families go. And we have our Promotores here today. So I want to mention right there. And it has been a great experience really to be able to have people with experience. Sometimes we think that the people who work with our communities, they have to have a PhD, They have to go to school. Yes, you have a lot of knowledge, but it's nothing like it when you really experience the same issue the other communities actually experience. They are the experts of what the community needs because they have gone through the same issues. They're still going through the same issues. So we came up with that idea that the best way to really address those issues was by bringing experts from our community. And when we say experts, is our same community. So these powerful women, led by Elena Aranda, who is a visionary here and really supported to this great idea, it really gives us the opportunity to reach every single person in our community. They have done an excellent work, and the model is not new. It's not invented by Amistad. It was pretty much implemented back in the 70s in Mexico to really address the needs of isolated communities in rural areas because they have no access to healthcare. So it's similar here. You might say we have a lot of resources, but guess what? We have language barriers. We have, especially documentation problem. They're afraid to really show up to a doctor's appointment. And we partnered currently with People's Clinic in Boulder, and they saw a decrease of over 1,700 patients, especially immigrants, because they are afraid. After the administration, they thought if they show up, they're going to pick them up and they're going to be deported. Public charge has been another one where the misinformation goes out there and people get that fear. They say, well, what do I do? Well, I'm staying home. Or I just go to a doctor in the carniceria, in the store. My baby can prescribe and buy my own antibiotics. Well, our approach has been more prevention. Really identify those individuals, provide information, and really connecting them and make sure that they feel safe to reconnect with the clinic again. It has been a very difficult process because you cannot take the fear away from their minds. And in reality, this is the reality that we live on. It's not going to go away. So the guarantees that we have in our community to really see that the People's Clinic is a safe place where they can go. Well, sometimes community members, they don't believe it. So our promotoras do a great job. They go home to home. They knock at every single house. They are part of the same community. So they have the trust from our community. So if I tell them, hey, go to the doctor. Don't wait until you get sick. They say, no, I'm not going to go. But if your promotora, neighbor, say, you know what, I'm going with you. I'm going to facilitate going with you to make sure that everything is fine. That makes a difference. And we have seen the impact in our community really are willing to tag and prevent any kind of disease because we want to reduce also the cost of medical costs because they ended in the ER. And they provide a lot of tools for families to really be healthier. But something that we have identified, or they have identified, has been that emotional well-being issue that a lot of the families are suffering. So another of the programs that we have is emotional well-being circle with the promoters really identify families and provide a connection with a group of therapists that they provide pro bono work to organization for free sessions. We don't call therapy, it's more counseling and coaching, and because it's needed. And it's also taboo for a lot of Latinos to say, oh, I'm not going to go to a therapist because I'm not crazy. So the promoters have the ways to really tell them why this is part of your health. And your mind is healthy, your body is healthy. We need those parents, those moms, to be available for the kids. So that model has been really powerful in our community. We have been working for the last 4 years, and we continue growing, and the need is there, and we see the other communities because we do a lot of work in Boulder, yes, because we're based in Boulder, but we have expanded to Lafayette and Longmont because they say, what about us? So I'm really happy and really glad that we have a promotoras really doing a great job in our